Professor Zixara stood before the ornate mirror in her quarters, adjusting the ceremonial sash that denoted her status as Dean of Xenohistory at the prestigious Galactic University of Varan. Her emerald scales shimmered in the soft light, and she took a moment to study the familiar lines etched into her face by time and experience. Today was no ordinary day. It marked the 150th cycle since the evacuation, and she was to give a speech to the entire student body. As she made her way through the crystalline corridors of the university, her mind wandered to the generations of students she had taught, the countless times she had recounted the story of humanity's sacrifice. Yet, no matter how often she told it, the weight of the tale never diminished. The grand amphitheater was packed to capacity, a sea of shimmering scales in every hue imaginable. As Zixara took the stage, a hush fell over the crowd. She gazed out at the thousands of young faces, each representing a future that might never have been without the intervention of a now-lost species. Esteemed colleagues, honored guests, bright young minds of Varan, she began, her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber by unseen technology. We gather today, not just to commemorate our past, but to contemplate our future. For the two are inextricably linked by a species many of you have never seen, a people whose very existence has passed into legend. With a gesture, she activated the holographic display. The air shimmered, and a life-sized image of a human appeared beside her. "This," she said, her voice filled with reverence, "is a human." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Zixara allowed herself a small smile. Even after all these years, the mere sight of a human could provoke such a reaction. 150 cycles ago, she continued, our species stood on the brink of extinction. Our homeworld, Varan Prime, was dying. The hologram shifted, showing a planet racked by geological upheaval. Volcanoes spewed ash into toxic skies, while vast chasms split continents apart. Our scientists had discovered a fatal flaw in our planet's core, Zixara explained. Within a decade, Varan Prime would tear itself apart. We were a young species, barely having achieved interplanetary travel. We had no means to save ourselves. She paced slowly across the stage, her tail swishing gently behind her. We sent distress calls to every corner of the galaxy, begging for aid. The responses were disappointing. The hologram displayed a series of alien races, each bearing an expression of indifference or thinly veiled greed. Some ignored us entirely. Others offered aid at prices so exorbitant they might as well have let us perish. A few, her voice hardened, even suggested we surrender our sovereignty in exchange for sanctuary. The audience hissed in disapproval. Even after all this time, the callousness of those responses still stung. And then, Zixara said, her voice softening, when all hope seemed lost, they came. The hologram changed again, showing a vast armada of sleek, otherworldly ships entering Varan Prime's orbit. The design was unlike anything in the modern galaxy, a testament to the unique nature of human engineering. The humans arrived in force, not to conquer, not to exploit, but to save. Zixara's voice grew animated as she recounted the evacuation. She told of how the humans worked tirelessly, their strange, soft-skinned bodies persevering in conditions that would have felled a Varanian. She spoke of their laughter, their tears, their unbreakable spirit. "I remember," she said softly, "a human named Sarah. She was part of the team assigned to my family's district. I was but a hatchling, terrified of leaving the only home I'd ever known. Sarah knelt down beside me, her alien features twisted into what I later learned was a smile, and she said, 'It's okay to be scared, but I promise you, little one, we're going to take you somewhere amazing.'" Zixara paused, lost in the memory. She was right. The hologram shifted to show a new world, a paradise of azure oceans and verdant continents. They called it New Varan, Zixara explained. A world they had been terraforming for their own use, gifted to us in our hour of need. She described in vivid detail the monumental effort of the evacuation, how the humans had not only saved the Varanian people, but had gone to extraordinary lengths to preserve their culture and ecosystem. "They did more than save our bodies," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They saved our very essence. They preserved samples of every plant and animal they could find. They even dismantled entire buildings of cultural significance, transporting them piece by piece." The hologram showed images of human ships carefully loading ancient temples, libraries, and monuments. The great temple of Ixis that stands in our capital? The humans moved it stone by stone, reconstructing it exactly as it had stood for 10,000 years on Varan Prime. A ripple of awe passed through the audience. Many had visited the great temple, but few knew the full story of its preservation. But the story doesn't end there, Zixara said, her tone growing somber. For you see, the humans' act of kindness came at a terrible cost. The hologram shifted once more, displaying a star map of the galaxy. A dark, ominous mass appeared at its edge. 5 cycles after our resettlement, Zixara continued, a new threat emerged. We called them the Scourge. The image zoomed in on one of the Scourge ships. It was a nightmarish construct of twisted metal and pulsing organic matter, more akin to a half-decayed corpse than a vessel of space travel. The Scourge were unlike any species we had encountered before. They did not seek resources or territory. They sought only to destroy, to corrupt, to twist all life into a mockery of itself. Zixara's voice hardened. Many of the same races that had turned their backs on us now begged for aid. The Galactic Council, which had watched in silence as Varan Prime died, now called for unified action. She let out a bitter laugh. But their fine words were not backed by action. Fleet after fleet fell before the Scourge advance. Entire systems were lost, their populations enslaved or worse. The hologram showed scenes of devastation, planets aflame, twisted monstrosities that had once been sentient beings, fleets of ships fleeing in terror. And then, Zixara said, her voice filled with a mix of pride and sorrow, humanity stepped forward once again. The scene changed to show the human fleet, still bearing scars from the Varanian evacuation, moving to engage the Scourge. The humans, still recovering from the effort of saving us, stood as the galaxy's first and last line of defense. They called for allies, and we answered. The Varanians, the Koran, the Zethari, all races that humanity had aided in the past, rallied to their banner. Zixara's voice dropped to a near whisper. The battle that followed was beyond description. The hologram displayed scenes of unimaginable carnage. Human ships, vastly outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. Varanian vessels darted between lumbering Scourge hive ships, their energy weapons carving glowing furrows in corrupted hulls. For 40 days and 40 nights, the battle raged across an entire sector, Zixara continued. I was there, a young ensign on the Varanian cruiser Dawn's Hope. I saw things that haunt me still. Her eyes took on a faraway look. I saw human ships, crippled and burning, ram themselves into Scourge vessels rather than surrender. I heard their transmissions, their defiant last words as they gave their lives to save others. The hologram showed a human battleship, its hull breached in a dozen places, plowing into a Scourge mothership. Both vessels disappeared in a blinding flash of light. But against all odds we won, Zixara said, her voice rising. The Scourge armada was broken, its remnants fleeing back into the dark between galaxies. The cost was unimaginable. The hologram displayed the aftermath of the battle. A field of debris stretching across light years, the broken husks of countless ships drifting in the void. Billions of lives were lost, Zixara said softly. Entire species were wiped out, but none paid a higher price than the humans. The image changed to show Earth, the human homeworld. Once a jewel of blue and green, it was now a scorched, lifeless rock. In their desperation, the Scourge had launched a final spiteful attack. They ignited the very core of Earth, turning it into a miniature sun. The blast wave sterilized the entire system. A collective gasp went up from the audience. Zixara nodded grimly. The humans had saved us all, but at the cost of their own world. Their colonies, already strained by the war effort, could not sustain their population. It seemed that humanity, in saving the galaxy, had doomed itself. She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. Then her voice took on a note of fierce pride. But if you think that was the end of humanity, you don't know humans. The hologram shifted again, showing massive ships unlike any seen before. They were cities in space, entire ecosystems contained within their gleaming hulls. They called them Orcs, Zixara explained. Great vessels capable of sustaining millions of lives for generations, and with fire in their eyes and hope in their hearts, they set out into the unknown. A student raised a trembling hand. Where did they go, Professor? Zixara smiled sadly. To find a new home, to rebuild, and perhaps, to find the scourge's point of origin and end the threat once and for all. They swore they would return, but that was 100 cycles ago. The amphitheater was silent, thousands of young minds grappling with the weight of this history. Some say they're still out there, Zixara continued softly, fighting, exploring, saving other worlds as they saved ours. Others believe they perished in the dark between galaxies, but she placed a hand over her heart, I believe they'll return. Humanity's spirit was too bright, too fierce to be extinguished so easily. She gestured to the corner of the room where a statue stood. It depicted a human, hand outstretched in a gesture of friendship. This is why we remember. This is why we keep their memory alive, because we owe them everything, and because someday they might need us as we needed them.